It started with barking, loud, desperate, and persistent. At first, the residents of Willow Creek chalked it up to just another stray dog wandering through the woods near the edge of the neighborhood. No one paid it much attention. But after the third night of those same urgent barks, coming from the same wooded patch behind the old abandoned construction site, people began to whisper. The barking wasn't casual. It wasn't the random noise of a dog chasing squirrels or barking at shadows. It was sharp, frantic, almost pleading, like the dog wanted someone to notice. Eleanor Jensen, a retired nurse with a keen sense for when something wasn't right, couldn't ignore it anymore. She'd lived on Sycamore Lane for over 30 years and knew the neighborhood like the back of her hand. The barking had an edge that gnawed at her. It didn't just echo, it cried. On the fourth night, just after 9 p.m., she grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The air was crisp and quiet, aside from that familiar bark echoing from the woods. Her curiosity pulled her across her neatly trimmed lawn, through a break in the fence and into the thicket bordering the old construction zone. She shivered as the flashlight beam danced across rusted beams and vines that had grown wild over concrete slabs. Then she saw it. A scruffy shepherd mix dog stood near a pile of overgrown rubble, barking furiously and pawing at the ground. Its ribs were faintly visible beneath matted fur, but what struck Eleanor wasn't the dog's condition. It was its eyes, wide, intelligent, desperate. When the beam of light landed on him, he stopped barking, stared at her, and whined. Then, without hesitation, he slipped into a hole at the base of a collapsed section of concrete. "Wait," Eleanor called out, but the dog had vanished into the earth. She crept closer and crouched, shining the light into the hole. It looked like an old drainage tunnel, part of the unfinished stormwater system they'd started building years ago before. The funding dried up. The entrance was narrow, surrounded by crumbling concrete and thick roots, but large enough for a medium-sized dog or a child. Her heart dropped. She didn't dare crawl in alone. Something was definitely down there, something the dog wouldn't leave behind. She called out again, hoping for a bark in return, but the tunnel remained eerily silent now. Shaken, she hurried back to her house and dialed her neighbor, David Ramos, a 28-year-old mechanic who often helped her with repairs. He answered groggily but agreed to meet her right away. Within minutes, David arrived, tugging on a hoodie over his t-shirt, curiosity etched on his face. Eleanor recounted what she'd seen, and together, with gloves, a long rope, and 2 high-powered flashlights, they returned to the site. The entrance was still open. No sign of the dog. David secured the rope to a protruding metal beam and slowly lowered himself into the tunnel. As the beam of his flashlight cut through the blackness, Eleanor waited at the edge, biting her lip. She heard his boots crunching below, then his voice. "Oh my God, Eleanor, call 911. Her stomach dropped. What is it?" "There's someone down here, a kid, and the dog's with her." She fumbled with her phone, dialing with trembling fingers as David's voice echoed faintly upward, reassuring whoever was down there. Emergency services were dispatched immediately. As they waited, Eleanor sat on a nearby stone, staring into the dark tunnel that had just revealed a secret no one could have imagined. A stray dog, a hidden tunnel, a crying child. What on earth was going on underneath Willow Creek? David crouched, low in the narrow tunnel, his flashlight flickering against the damp, uneven walls. The air was thick with the scent of mildew, earth, and something faintly metallic. He moved cautiously, hands brushing rough concrete and tangled roots. Just a few feet ahead, the beam of light caught a shape, small, curled, and shaking. It was a little girl. She was huddled beside a collapsed drainage pipe, her knees tucked to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around the neck of the same stray dog Eleanor had seen earlier. Her hair was tangled and matted with dirt. Her face was streaked with grime, her eyes wide with fear as the light landed on her. David froze, not wanting to frighten her further. The dog raised its head and growled low, protectively positioning itself between David and the girl. But it didn't lunge. It didn't bark. It just watched. "Hey," David said softly, crouching lower. "It's okay. I'm here to help. You're safe now." The girl didn't respond. She just clutched the dog tighter and trembled. David pulled out his phone and snapped a quick photo before slowly backing out of the tunnel. When he reached the surface, Eleanor was pacing nearby, her flashlight shaking in her hand. "Is it really a child?" she asked, voice trembling. David nodded, breathless. "Yeah, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7. She's not talking. She's terrified. That dog's with her. It's protecting her." Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the edge of the forest as paramedics, firefighters and police arrived. A rescue team was assembled. They lowered a small paramedic into the tunnel with blankets, soft words and a bottle of water. The girl refused to leave at first. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't let go of the dog. But the paramedic gently coaxed her, promising the dog could come to. Finally, slowly, she allowed herself to be pulled out, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The dog, now nicknamed Shadow by the rescue crew, followed closely, never once taking his eyes off her. When they emerged into the open air, a collective gasp came from the gathering crowd of neighbors. The girl squinted against the sudden light, her small face pale and dirty, her eyes hollow and frightened. She said nothing. She didn't even cry. She just clung to Shadow's neck, as if her life depended on it. The paramedics rushed her into the back of the ambulance. Shadow tried to follow but was held back by a police officer. Then the girl screamed, "No, no, don't take him, he's mine, he's mine." Everyone froze. It was the first time she had spoken. The officer looked uncertain. After a quick radio exchange with the lead investigator, they allowed the dog to jump into the ambulance with her. Shadow leapt in without hesitation, immediately curling beside her on the stretcher. David stood beside Eleanor, watching in stunned silence as the ambulance pulled away. "This doesn't make sense," Eleanor whispered. "Where did she come from? And why was she down there?" David shook his head. "I don't know. But that dog, he didn't just find her, he stayed, protected her, led us to her, he knew." Police began combing the area, setting up tape around the tunnel. Search teams entered the woods, looking for any clues as to where the girl had come from. The tunnel was part of an abandoned stormwater system, unfinished and forgotten. It was never meant to be accessed, yet somehow it had become a hiding place or a prison. As the night wore on, the questions multiplied. Who was the girl? How long had she been down there? And what had happened to her? But perhaps the most chilling question of all was the one no one wanted to ask out loud. What or who had she been hiding from? At Willow Creek Memorial Hospital, the little girl was given a private room, tucked away from the bustling main ward. Nurses came and went, whispering softly, always careful not to raise their voices or move too quickly. The girl, still unnamed, still silent, lay curled on the bed in a fresh hospital gown, IV in her arm, dirt scrubbed gently from her skin. Her eyes never left the dog curled up beside her. Shadow refused to move. He lay pressed against her side, one paw lightly resting. Across her legs, his eyes watchful, alert. The hospital staff had never seen anything like it. "She won't eat unless he's beside her," Nurse Marla told the pediatrician. "He's more than just a pet to her. He's her anchor." The girl hadn't spoken again since that panicked cry in the ambulance. She wouldn't answer questions, wouldn't make eye contact, wouldn't even nod or shake her head. The social worker assigned to her case, Elena Morales, had worked with dozens of traumatized children before, but something about this case shook her deeply. No missing child alerts matched the girl's appearance, no local or national bulletins, no Amber alerts, no desperate parents calling the hospital. It was like she didn't exist. "We're calling her Jane Doe for now," Officer Kenley told Elena during a briefing. "Best guess is she's around 6, maybe 7. Malnourished, but not critically. Her injuries are mostly old bruises, scrapes, neglect, not direct violence. She's been hiding for days, possibly longer." Elena sat with the girl every afternoon. She didn't ask questions at first. She simply colored in silence, laid picture, books on the bed, and sometimes gently hummed lullabies from her own childhood. Sometimes the girl would glance at her, but never speak. It was only when Elena brought a plush toy that resembled Shadow, a fuzzy little replica with floppy ears and black eyes, that the girl reached out, barely brushing it with her fingers. On the 4th day, while Elena sat beside her sketching, In a notebook, she felt a tug on her sleeve. She turned. The girl was looking at her, really looking, eyes wide and glassy. Elena gently placed her hand on the girl's. "Do you have a name, sweetheart?" A long pause. The girl's lips moved, barely above a whisper. "Lena." Elena smiled gently. "Lena, that's a beautiful name." The girl's grip on her hand tightened. Her voice trembled. "Don't take him away, please." It took everything in Elena not to cry. "I won't," she said. "I promise. Shadow stays." From that moment, a fragile thread formed between them. Over the next 2 days, Lena began speaking in short phrases, always about Shadow. How he licked her face when she cried. How he brought her a sandwich from the trash. How he led her away from the scary trailer. That word, trailer, made Elena's blood run cold. She reported it immediately. Officers returned to the wooded area, this time branching out farther beyond the construction zone. With search dogs and drones, they scanned the dense foliage, beyond the tree line. And then a breakthrough. One of the deputies found an old rusted trailer buried beneath ivy and brush, nearly invisible from the main road. The interior was horrifying. Molded food, soiled clothes, broken furniture, a single mattress on the floor. Children's toys scattered carelessly, but no people. Elena was called to the site, her stomach churning as she stepped inside. Photos of Lena were confirmed. It was her. The trailer was where she had been kept. The man she had run from and the scary one, Viking, was gone. And now, for the first time in days, a new feeling filled the air in Willow Creek. Danger. Who had taken Lena? How long had she been missing? And more urgently, would he come looking for her? Elena glanced at the photo she'd taken of Lena curled beside Shadow. They were lucky to have found her, but she feared they weren't done yet. The rusted trailer was barely standing. Its door hung from one hinge, creaking every time the wind stirred through the trees. Inside, the air was thick with decay, and sunlight filtered through cracks in the roof like ghostly fingers. Investigators worked carefully, photographing everything. Torn blankets, stained clothing, and broken toys that spoke of a child's presence, without the warmth or love that should have come with it. Detective Miles Granger stood in the doorway. His jaw clenched. "He lived here with her," he muttered. "God knows for how long." One of the officers brought over a crumpled backpack. Inside were old granola wrappers, a cracked plastic mirror, and a tattered coloring book. Scribbled, in the corner of one page was a single word, written in messy, childish handwriting: Lena. There was no doubt now. This was where she had been held, but still no records, no birth certificate, no school registration. It was as though Lena had been born in that trailer and hidden ever since. Back at the hospital, Lena was slowly improving. She still flinched at loud noises and avoided unfamiliar faces, but she spoke more each day. Shadow never left her side. Nurses gave up trying to remove him from the bed. He was her protector, her therapy, her family. Elena brought her soft food, art supplies, and small toys. But Lena only ever wanted to draw Shadow. Dozens of pages filled with sketches of him, guarding her, licking her face, leading her out of the woods. In every drawing she was never alone, he was always there. One afternoon, as Elena sat beside her reading, Lena spoke suddenly. He said if I left, the monsters would come. Elena turned, stunned. Who said that? Lena stared at the ceiling. The man with the red cap. He said the monsters live in the world, but not in the woods. The woods are safe. Eleanor's heart pounded. A red cap. Finally, a detail. Detective Granger jumped on the lead. He circulated the description of a man. Mid-40s, unkempt, average height, always seen wearing a red baseball cap. A handful of nearby towns reported seeing someone matching the description, always alone, always living off-grid. One gas station owner remembered him vividly. He came in last week, the man said, bought canned food, didn't say a word, just paid cash and left. Security footage confirmed it. Same man, same red cap. But he'd been careful, no license plate on his truck, no name, no ID. It was now a race. Granger returned to the trailer one last time, hoping to find something overlooked. As he moved a rotted rug near the back wall, something caught his eye, a loose panel behind a stack of old boxes. Behind it, a metal lockbox. Inside, documents, a fake birth certificate, a forged name Lila Jameson, no parents listed, and a grainy photo of a much younger Lena, no older than 2, held by a man wearing a red cap. Granger clenched the photo. He raised her off the grid, hid her from everyone. Maybe he kidnapped her, or maybe worse. Now, it wasn't just a local mystery. It was a potential nationwide abduction case. Back at the hospital, security was quietly increased. Officers were stationed outside Lena's door. Cameras were added to the hallways. No visitors were allowed without clearance, because if this man had gone through this much trouble to keep Lena hidden, he might go through more to get her back. That night, while nurses changed shifts and shadows stretched across the hospital floor, a security guard passed by the back entrance and paused. A figure stood by the edge of the woods, barely visible. In the moonlight, a man wearing a red cap and watching the building. The guard fumbled for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I think we've got him." "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I think we've got him." The security guard's voice crackled through the hospital radio, sharp and urgent. Within seconds, a team of officers was dispatched to the rear entrance of Willow Creek Memorial. They rushed down the back corridor, bursting out into the cool night air with flashlights and hands on their weapons. But the figure in the red cap was already gone. The edge of the woods swayed gently in the breeze, branches rustling like whispers. A few scattered footprints led into the dense trees, but quickly vanished in the undergrowth. Detective Granger arrived moments later. His jaw tightened as he examined the prints. He's close, watching, waiting. Back inside, hospital security was heightened. Lena's room was moved to a locked pediatric wing, access granted only to Elena, medical staff, and the investigating officers. Shadow followed every step of the transfer, his body tense, growling at anyone who got too close to Lena's bed. Lena, once again shaken, curled into herself. She hadn't seen the man, but somehow she sensed the danger. When Elena visited, that evening Lena tugged at her sleeve with trembling fingers. "He's here." Elena sat down beside her. "You're safe now, Lena. We have officers and cameras. He can't come in." Lena shook her head. "He's mad. He said if I ever left, he'd come for me. He always finds me." The dog rested his chin on her leg, his ears twitching at every hallway sound. Elena exchanged a glance with the nurse at the door. This man, whoever he was, had trained Lena to fear the world outside. He had isolated her, brainwashed her. If he was willing to stalk a hospital under surveillance, who knew what else he might do? Meanwhile, detectives followed up on the documents found in the trailer. The forged birth certificate was sent to the FBI, who began cross-checking national databases of missing children. Within 24 hours, they hit something chilling. A child named Amelia Brooks had gone missing from Tennessee nearly 5 years ago. She'd been 2 years old when her mother, Marissa Brooks, reported her abducted from a local park. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses. The case had gone cold. Until now, photos matched. DNA from Lena's hospital blood work confirmed the truth. Lena was Amelia. Her mother was still alive. When Marissa Brooks received the call from authorities, she dropped the phone and screamed. "I thought she was dead. I thought I'd never see her again." Arrangements were made for Marissa to fly out immediately, but Granger and Elena both agreed any reunion had to be handled with extreme care. Lena remembered nothing of her old life. Her only memory of family was the man in the red cap and the dog who had saved her. The next morning, Granger held a press conference, careful not to give away the hospital's exact location, but revealing enough to make the public aware. A composite sketch of the man was released. Weathered face, beard, mid-40s, red cap. Armed and dangerous. As the broadcast aired, a truck stop worker 50 miles south phoned in. He was here, just now. Bought gas. Headed west. The manhunt intensified. Back at the hospital, Elena prepared Lena gently for the coming reunion. "There's someone who wants to see you," she said. "A woman named Marissa. She's very special to you." Lena's brow furrowed. "Do I know her?" "You did," Elena said softly. "Before the woods. before the trailer. Lena looked down at Shadow, then slowly nodded. "Can Shadow come too?" Elena smiled. "Of course." The next morning, Marissa walked into the hospital room, tears streaming down her face, hands shaking as she saw the daughter she'd lost, older now, guarded, but unmistakably her. Lena stared at her for a long moment, then looked at Shadow, then back at Marissa. "Mommy?" Marissa collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "Yes, baby, yes, it's me." Shadow rested his head on Lena's lap, as mother and daughter embraced for the first time in 5 years. But far from Willow Creek, a red-capped man watched the news in a flickering motel room, and he smiled. The reunion between Lena and her mother was both heart-wrenching and delicate. Marissa held her daughter like porcelain, afraid too much love might break her. Lena clung to Shadow, eyes darting to the window as though expecting someone to drag her back at any moment. Elena stayed close, guiding them gently through those first fragile days. "She doesn't remember much," Marissa whispered. "But she called me Mommy. That's enough, that's everything." But Detective Granger couldn't afford to be caught in the emotion. While one chapter was closing, another, far darker, was far from over. The man in the red cap, now identified as Colton Ray Mills, had vanished again. Granger stared at the motel surveillance footage from the truck stop. Colton had filled up an old Chevy Blazer, paid in cash and left heading west on the I-40. His beard was thicker now, his eyes sunken. He didn't look panicked. He looked calm. Too calm. "He's planning something," Granger muttered. "He wouldn't have shown up at the hospital unless he was bold or desperate." The FBI issued a federal warrant for Mills. His face was plastered across every major news outlet, with tips pouring in from multiple states, but none led to him. Each time they arrived, he was already gone, like smoke slipping through cracks. Elena couldn't help but notice the shift in the hospital too. Nurses moved more carefully. Doors were double-checked. Even Shadow began reacting to noises, barking at carts rolling past, pacing restlessly. At night, he knew Lena was improving. She laughed sometimes. She even asked for pancakes one morning, her voice small but hopeful. But she wouldn't let anyone take Shadow home, not even her mother. "Not without Shadow," she said firmly. "He stays with me." Marissa had hesitated at first. She'd never been a dog person, but when she saw the way Shadow stood between Lena and the doorway, she understood. He wasn't just a pet. He was family. The hospital psychiatrist warned that taking Shadow away might undo everything. "Let the dog go home with her," he said. "She needs consistency. She needs to feel protected." The town rallied behind Lena. Donations poured in. A local officer offered to train Shadow formally as a service animal. Volunteers brought toys, clothes, books. For a brief, shining moment, Willow Creek wasn't just a town, it was a sanctuary. But then, the letters started arriving. The first was addressed to Amelia. Written in shaky block letters on a torn napkin, it was slipped under the door of the hospital's west entrance. "I forgive you for running, but you don't belong with them. You belong with me. I'll come get you soon. Be ready. Dad." The second came 2 days later, a note inside a children's picture book left in the hospital gift shop. "They can't keep us apart forever. I taught you better than that. Dogs can't protect you forever, but I can." Elena sat beside Detective Granger, both of them pale and furious. "He's taunting us," Granger growled. "He's in town, under our noses." Hospital security swept every floor, every visitor was screened. Still, no one spotted him. Marissa insisted on moving Lena to a safer location. "She's not safe here anymore," she said. "We'll go somewhere remote, somewhere new." But when the transport team arrived that evening, the driver, a trusted hospital contractor, never showed. Instead, another van rolled up to the emergency bay. Same markings, same credentials, but the license plate didn't match. By the time someone checked, the van was gone. And so was Lena. Panic erupted the moment the real hospital driver arrived, 15 minutes late and out of breath. "I was stuck behind a wreck on Highway 8, he exclaimed. "I radioed ahead." But no one at the dispatch desk had received his message. And, worse, no one had questioned the look-alike van that arrived early. The hospital erupted into chaos. Police swarmed the property, sirens howling through the night. Marissa collapsed in the hallway, screaming her daughter's name. Eleanor grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called Detective Granger, who was already on his way back from the FBI field office. "She's gone," Elena whispered, breath catching. He took her, but one thing gave her hope: Shadow. The big black dog had been taken from Lena's hospital room only minutes before the fake van arrived. A nurse had assumed he was being prepared for transfer too, but Shadow had broken free. In the parking lot, darting into the woods, nose to the ground. He was following her. By morning, Granger organized a statewide manhunt, this time with a dedicated K9 and aerial search team. But it was Shadow, untethered, wild and determined, who had the best lead. For hours he moved through the woods, tracking a scent familiar and dear to him: Lena. Two hikers spotted the dog sprinting across a dried creek bed near the Pine Hollow Reserve. When they tried to approach, he barked furiously and bolted deeper into the brush. One of them had the good sense to call it in. "This dog, he's searching for something," the woman told dispatch. "He's not lost. He knows where he's going." Granger rerouted officers to the last known point. Drones were deployed. Tactical units moved through the trees, following the trail Shadow had carved. Eleanor arrived on site, heart pounding. She didn't say a word, just waited, watching the trees with burning eyes. Then they found the second van abandoned, no sign of Lena, blood on the back seat. A red cap left on the dashboard, inside a single note: "She was mine. You don't get to steal what's mine." The blood wasn't Lena's. It was Colton Mills. They found tire tracks leading west, but no footprints. He'd switched vehicles, again, and disappeared. But Shadow hadn't stopped. The dog was seen later that evening along Route 27, pawing at a small ravine and barking relentlessly. Officers rappelled down into the crevice and discovered a weathered trapdoor half buried in dirt and branches. It led to an old storm shelter. Inside, the smell hit them first: dampness, mildew, gasoline. Then they heard it. A whimper. "Shadow." Came a small voice. A flashlight flickered over the corner of the bunker. And there she was, Lena, huddled beneath a dirty blanket, wrists zip-tied, tear tracks down her cheeks. But alive. When Shadow lunged into the shelter moments later, she burst into sobs, wrapping her arms around his neck, whispering over and over, "You found me! You found me!" Granger pulled her from the shelter gently, eyes scanning for any signs of Colton Mills. But he was gone again. What he didn't know, what no one had planned, was that Shadow's collar, fitted just a week earlier with a GPS chip by the local Kahatin unit, had tracked his every step. And now the FBI had a map of Colton's exact escape route. They were closing in. Back at the hospital, Lena was reunited with Marissa, clutching Shadow like a lifeline. She was bruised, dehydrated, terrified, but strong. Stronger than anyone had imagined. "You came for me," she whispered in Elena's ear. "You all came." "No," Elena replied, eyes misting. He did. That night, as storm clouds rolled in over Willow Creek, a black SUV pulled into a lonely gas station on the edge of the county. Inside was a man, his hands bloodied, his breathing ragged. He bought duct tape, rope, and a road atlas, and he still had a list. Lena's name was just the first. The wind howled through the dark trees, lining the old county road as Colton Mills drove with bloodied knuckles and hollow eyes. The map on the passenger seat was marked in red ink, towns circled, highways crossed out. He wasn't running, he was hunting, but what he didn't know was that he was now the prey. Thanks to Shadow's GPS collar, authorities had pinpointed Colton's escape path down to the minute. Every gas station, every road stop, every back alley he passed through had been tracked in real time. A network of law enforcement stretched across 3 states was waiting for him to make a mistake. And he did. At 2:14 a.m., Colton stopped at a rundown service station just outside Briar Creek. Tired and paranoid, he didn't notice the marked patrol car parked discreetly behind the mechanic's garage. He didn't see the motion-activated camera above the door. But the facial recognition system did. The alert pinged in the local sheriff's office in seconds, Detective Granger got the call in the middle of a briefing. He didn't hesitate. "Seal every road within a 10-mile radius," he barked. "He doesn't leave that town." Meanwhile, back at Willow Creek, Lena was beginning to sleep without trembling. The hospital psychiatrist sat with her every morning, helping her untangle memories no child should carry. Her drawings, once only of Shadow, now included Elena, Marissa, even Detective Granger, with Shadow always standing protectively beside them all. But the nightmares hadn't ended. "He said I was the first," Lena whispered one day. That he had more, that he was making a family. Marissa had turned pale. Elena clutched her hand. They realized with dawning horror, Lena might not be the only child he'd taken, or planned to take. The FBI cross-referenced missing persons files from surrounding counties, and one name surfaced again and again: Colton Mills, connected distantly to 3 other child disappearances over the past decade. All unsolved, all from small rural towns. He had a pattern and a mission, but now the mission was over. At 3:06 a.m., Colton Mills attempted to flee from a back road gas station after spotting flashing lights in the distance. He slammed his Blazer into gear and tore down an old logging trail, only to find the road blocked by 2 squad cars. He spun the wheel hard, crashing into a ditch. He ran on foot, disappearing into the forest, but this time the forest didn't protect him. Shadow was there. The dog had picked up his scent again after being brought to the perimeter. Unleashed and driven by instinct, Shadow tore through the woods like a bullet. Officers followed close behind. Granger heard the bark first, sharp, aggressive, final. They found Mills backed against a tree, clothes torn, blood dripping from a shallow bite wound on his arm. Shadow stood between him and the officers, growling, low and fierce, daring him to move. Mills didn't. He was arrested on the spot. Back in Willow Creek, news of his capture swept through the hospital like a gust of light. Nurses wept, officers embraced. Eleanor simply sat in Lena's room, quietly holding her hand. Lena looked up at Shadow, who rested at the foot of her bed, then at the small television where Colton's mugshot had just appeared. "Does this mean he's gone forever?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. He'll never hurt you or anyone else again." The courtroom was packed during the trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Testimonies from Lena, the trail of forged documents, the GPS records, the letters, all painted a chilling picture. Colton Mills was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole, and Lena, now officially reunited with her birth name, Amelia Brooks, was finally free. Months later, in a modest home outside town, Amelia ran through the backyard with Shadow bounding beside her. Her laughter rang clear and unbroken. Marissa sat on the porch, tears in her eyes, watching the life she thought had been stolen returned in pieces, day by day. Elena visited often. She never came without a bag of treats for Shadow and a hug for Amelia. The town of Willow Creek erected a small statue at the park entrance, a bronze sculpture of a dog, head high, eyes alert. The plaque read, "To the hero who never gave up, Shadow, guardian, fighter, friend," and beneath it, one simple line: "Sometimes the bravest rescuer walks on 4 legs."